There is a war going on inside you, and you have felt it your whole life. Part of you wants one thing, and another part wants the opposite. Part of you reaches for the light, and another part pulls toward the dark. You resolve with your whole conscious will to be a certain way, and then something rises from your depths and undoes the resolution, and you are left bewildered, asking why you cannot simply be one thing, why you are forever at odds with yourself. An old poet wrote that two souls dwell within his breast, and every honest person knows exactly what he meant. Jung wants to talk about this inner division because he came to believe that it lies at the root of most of our suffering, and that understanding it rightly is the beginning of becoming whole. He names the thing plainly first. So much of what we call inner suffering, the anxiety, the restlessness, the symptoms that have no clear outer cause, is at bottom a state of being divided against oneself. The person is at variance with himself. He is not a single, unified being moving in one direction. He split, cleft down the middle, with one part of his nature pulling against another, and the strain of that inner opposition is the suffering he feels. The neurosis, the inner trouble, is not some foreign disease that has invaded a healthy unity from outside. It is the felt agony of a self at war with itself, a personality that has come apart into opposing halves that can neither defeat each other nor make peace. You know this division from the inside, even if you have never named it. There is the part of you that wants to grow, to change, to step forward into life, and the part that clings to safety and pulls you back. There is the part that holds an ideal of who you should be, and the part, down in the depths, that wants the very things the ideal forbids. There is the face you show the world, polished and acceptable, and the dark, unruly nature beneath it that the polished face denies. There is duty on one side and desire on the other, the head pulling one way and the heart or the gut pulling another. These pairs of opposites run through every one of us, and when they fall into open war, when the two souls in the breast stop merely disagreeing and begin tearing at each other, the result is the inner suffering that brings so many people to despair. Jung tells you where this division comes from because it is not a random misfortune that strikes some unlucky people. It grows in large part out of the way we are made into civilized beings. To take our place in the world, every one of us has to develop one side of our nature and suppress the others. We become useful, capable, acceptable by concentrating ourselves into a particular shape and pushing everything that does not fit that shape down into the dark. The gentle man suppresses his aggression. The strong woman suppresses her softness. The dutiful person suppresses his longing for freedom. The respectable citizen suppresses the wild and the instinctual. This is not entirely avoidable. Some of it is the necessary price of becoming a functioning person at all. But it means that every one of us walks through life with a developed half held up in the light and a suppressed half pressed down into the shadow. And the wider that gap grows, the more one-sided we become, the deeper the crack runs through the center of the self. And the suppressed half does not die. This is what we never understand until it is too late. The part of your nature you pushed into the dark in order to become acceptable goes on living down there with all its original force, and it grows resentful of its exile, and it begins to pull against the half you have raised into the light. The harder and more rigidly you hold to your developed, acceptable side, the more violently the suppressed side strains against you from below. This is why the division so often breaks into open war precisely in people who have tried hardest to be good, to be disciplined, to be one clean thing. They have pushed their other half so far down that it has become a furious adversary, and now the two souls are not merely different but at war, and the war has become unbearable. Now here is the mistake almost everyone makes in the face of this division, and it is the mistake that keeps the war going forever. We assume that the cure is for one side to win. We take the side we approve of, the highest side, the ideal, the conscious will, and we try to make it conquer and crush the other, the lower side, the unruly depths. We declare war on the part of ourselves we have judged to be wrong, and we throw all our strength into defeating it. And this never works, for a reason that should be obvious once it is said, both of those warring parts are you. You cannot win a war against yourself, because whichever side loses, you lose, since you are both of them. To crush one half of your own nature is not to achieve unity. It is only to drive the defeated half underground, where it festers and gathers strength and rises again, more violent than before, so that the war is not ended, but merely hidden. The attempt to heal the division by making one side conquer the other only deepens the division. So what is the way out, if not victory? It is the thing that sounds, at first, almost impossible, not the victory of one side, but the reconciliation of both. The favorable outcome of all real inner healing rests, in the end, upon the reconciliation of the conflicting opposites in the soul. The two warring souls must be brought, not to a battlefield where one destroys the other, but to a kind of meeting, a negotiation, a coming to terms, in which each is allowed its truth and its place, and out of which a larger self can emerge that has room for both. This is the deep secret of becoming whole. Wholeness is not achieved by amputating the half of yourself you dislike. It is achieved by uniting the halves, by holding the opposites together until, out of their very tension, something new is born that transcends and contains them both. Jung makes this less abstract, because it is the most practical thing in the world. Suppose you are torn between a longing for security and a longing for adventure, and you have spent years condemning one side as cowardice and the other as recklessness, lurching between them, at peace with neither. The way of victory says, choose one, crush the other, become wholly safe or wholly bold. But the way of reconciliation asks a different question. What does each of these longings actually want for you? What truth does the longing for security hold, and what truth does the longing for security hold, and what truth does the longing for adventure hold? And can a life be built, a third way found, that honors both, that is neither the suppression of your caution nor the suppression of your daring, but a larger pattern in which your need for safety and your need for risk both have their place? This third thing, born of holding the opposites together rather than letting one destroy the other, is the resolution. It did not exist before. It could not exist as long as the two were merely at war. It comes into being only when you stop trying to make one side win and start seeking the larger whole that can contain them both. Jung wants to say something about how this third thing actually arrives, because people fear it is a trick or a vague hope rather than a real process. It does not come by clever compromise, by splitting the difference, by some calculated bargain worked out in the head. It comes from holding the tension honestly, consciously, without fleeing to either side, until something deeper than your conscious cleverness produces the answer. When you can bear to stand in the middle of your own contradiction, refusing to crush either half, refusing also to be torn apart, simply holding both in full awareness, a strange thing happens. The deeper psyche, the same creative depth that makes your dreams, begins to work on the problem, and in time it offers up a new possibility that your conscious mind could never have invented, a way of being that reconciles what seemed irreconcilable. This is not something you force. It is something you make room for, by having the courage to hold the opposites together long enough that the deeper self can do its uniting work. The resolution is born, not manufactured, and it is born only in the one who can endure the tension without collapsing it. This asks for a particular kind of strength, and Jung does not pretend it is easy, for it goes against every instinct. Everything in us wants to escape the discomfort of contradiction, to resolve the tension quickly by picking a side and silencing the other. To hold both, to remain consciously divided without either suppressing a half or being torn apart, is one of the hardest things a human being can do. It is far easier to declare one side right and make war on the other, even though that war never ends. But the person who can learn to suffer his own contradiction consciously, to hold his opposites in patient tension and wait, is the person in whom the miracle of reconciliation becomes possible. The capacity to bear your own inner division without fleeing it is the very doorway through which wholeness enters. Jung wants you to understand something hopeful and even astonishing about this inner division, because we are taught to see it only as an affliction. The conflict of opposites within you is not merely a curse, it is also the source of all your energy and all your growth. A soul with no inner tension, no pull between opposites, would be a still and lifeless thing. It is precisely the tension between the warring parts that generates the energy of your life. And when that tension is rightly held, rather than wasted in endless civil war, it becomes the very force that drives you toward wholeness. The division that torments you is the same division that, when reconciled, will make you larger than you ever were as a divided being. The crack that runs through you is not only a wound, it is also the place where the light gets in, the place where a greater self is trying to be born out of the meeting of your halves. This is why Jung says that the inner division, painful as it is not simply a disease to be eliminated, but a summons to be answered. The two souls in your breast are not a defect in your design. They are the raw material of a wholeness you have not yet achieved. As long as you fight to make one conquer the other, you stay divided and you suffer. But the moment you turn toward the work of reconciliation, of listening to both, of holding them together until the larger pattern reveals itself, the very suffering of your division begins to convert into the energy of your becoming. You stop being a battlefield and start becoming a meeting place, and out of that meeting comes the one thing the divided self could never produce, a whole human being, at peace, not because the war was won, but because the war was ended in a union greater than either side. Jung corrects one last misunderstanding, because it can rob you of the whole gift. People hear that wholeness ends the war and imagine it means reaching some final state where all inner tension vanishes, where you become a smooth, untroubled, perfectly unified being with no more pull of opposites at all. This is not what he means, and it is not possible, and it would not even be desirable. To be alive is to carry opposites. The tension between them is the very pulse of a living soul. The whole person is not the one who has eliminated all inner contradiction. The whole person is the one who has stopped making war on his own contradictions, who can hold his opposites consciously, with awareness and even with a kind of friendliness, so that their tension becomes a source of life rather than a civil war. Wholeness is not the silence of the opposites. It is the right relationship between them. It is the difference between two souls tearing each other apart in the dark, and two souls held together in the light by a self large enough for both. So in practice, the work is this. When you feel yourself torn, do not rush to crush the side you have judged to be wrong. Stop and turn toward both. Ask what each side truly wants, what need or truth each one is trying to protect. Refuse to exile either of them. Hold them both before you, consciously, with patience, even when it is uncomfortable, even when every instinct screams at you to pick one and be done. And trust that out of this honest holding, the deeper self will, in its own time, offer a way forward that honors both and belongs wholly to you. This is slow work, and it must be done again and again. But every time you choose to hold your division consciously rather than wage war on yourself, you take a step out of suffering and toward the wholeness that has been waiting all along on the far side of the war. So here's what Jung wants you to carry away. There are two souls at war inside you, and the strain of their conflict is the root of much of your suffering. You are divided at variance with yourself, one part pulling against another, and you have tried for years to heal this by making the side you approve of conquer the side you condemn. But you cannot win a war against yourself, because you are both sides, and crushing one half only drives it underground to rise again. The way out is not victory, but reconciliation, the bringing together of the opposites into a larger whole that has room for both, out of which a new and greater self is born. The division that torments you is also the source of your energy and your growth, the very place where a whole human being is trying to come into being. Stop making war on half of yourself. Turn the battlefield into a meeting place, and let the two souls in your breast become, at last, one. If you have felt this war inside you, Write 2 words in the comments so you mark it and so others find it. Write 2 souls. And when you are ready, come with Jung to the next one, because this whole capacity to suffer your own division, to be torn and to know it, points to something profound about how a human being awakens at all. You do not become truly conscious through comfort. You become conscious through conflict and doubt and problems. That is where we go next.